Hi, it's Larry Call. Welcome to Revenue Secrets. I'm very excited today to bring Brynne Tillman onto the program. Brynne is a LinkedIn guru, and she didn't just sprout up overnight in the pack of newly initiated LinkedIn experts. She's been doing this for a long time at a very high level. LinkedIn relies on her to do some product development, consulting. She's got a coaching business for corporate. She has some self-directed instructor-led trainings for self-employed CEOs, which is our audience here. And that's why I wanted to bring her on. So I'm going to ask you, Brynne, just before you introduce yourself and what you do in your own words, I want to ask you a quick question. When you were in your 20s, you were working in an inbound corporate call center. I'm sure that was a crappy job.
I loved
all
it.
Of a sudden, oh, you loved it.
I
Okay.
did.
And well, not everybody would. So you were in the right place. So you founded your career in a sense there, and you got promoted up into leadership because of some things you learned. And I'm curious that are those, I'd like you to talk a little, so introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you learned, and is that a foundation in a sense for what you're doing today?
100%.
At that time.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll clarify love that in just a minute. So I'll start with, hi, I'm Brynne Tillman. Pleasure to meet everyone on the line that's watching today. I help sales professionals start more conversations by leveraging the power of LinkedIn. In a nutshell, I started at Dun & Bradstreet in that inbound call center. And I was bored initially. So I loved that. I loved it. I loved what I gained from it. So I did find initially some boredom, and I quickly began having conversations with my callers, which allowed me to learn about the business decisions they were making and actually help them to buy better products from Dun & Bradstreet that can help them in their business dealings, which in quite a few cases had an impact on people's businesses. And I was in my early 20s, so I loved that piece of it. And I loved I would not have loved being an order taker, which is what I actually started the job as. But because I was able to help solve problems, I really quickly moved into a sales position. And was brought in to create a sales training course based on the success that I was having. So yeah, that's sort of that background there.
Got it, thanks. So as a self-employed CEO, the sales skills are usually not particularly well developed. But obviously, if you're in that position, as many in our audience are, you are the salesperson. How does someone like that, who doesn't necessarily have that orientation toward sales, take advantage of the kinds of things that at a very high level you're teaching professional salespeople to do?
Yeah, so I love that question. And I have grown my company beyond a solopreneur, but I was for years. And I did have the sales background, but for someone who is just a genius at their industry, and they've got a wonderful product or service, and what they're bringing to the market is top, world class, but they're challenged to get the word out, to have more first conversations with prospects. The key is to leverage your existing network. So what clients have you served that love you? And where in the traditional sales, we'd go to them and say, who else do you know? We can leverage LinkedIn to filter their connections and identify the 8 or 10 or 20 people that they know that you could help as well, that you pre-qualify based on your buyer persona. And bring the list to your happy clients and say, can I review these names with you and get some insights? And maybe you can share with me who on this list you think I can help the same way I was able to help you. And then either get a referral or permission to name drop.
So with that strategy, how do you overcome the challenge where many people are connected on LinkedIn with people that they don't really know?
Yeah, so
How does
it's
that
about
work?
20 or 25%. So if you come up with 20 names, there'll be 4 people they know.
So when you get down to that short list, then with them, so I imagine most people, are you finding, are pretty open to saying, sure, I'll give you a few minutes and we'll go through that list.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, they'll do that. So then there's this uncomfortable moment for someone who's not in sales. Someone in sales just jumps on it and does it. But people who are coming from, like you said, technical expertise background find this kind of thing very uncomfortable. Any tips about how to
Yeah,
deal with that?
so I think the conversation, I'm just going to kind of wing it, but the conversation would be something like, Larry, thanks so much for reviewing these names with me. Of these 4 people that you think it makes sense for me to reach out to, is there anyone on this list you'd be comfortable introducing me to? Now,
Yeah.
that's one way to go. The next way might be like, I know Larry is really busy and I don't want to add anything to his plate.
Mhm.
So maybe I'll say, hey, Larry, thank you so much for taking the time and reviewing these names with me. When I reach out to them, is it okay that I mention that you're my happy client and that we had this conversation? Great. Now I reach out and I go, George, Larry and I were chatting the other day and your name came up in our conversation. He's been my client for a couple of years and he thought it made sense for me to reach out and introduce myself. Let's connect and set up a time to chat.
So it's really simple. Now, do you find that you can do this through a LinkedIn message to the client, or is it something where you feel like you should take the time and get them on the phone and sort of explain what you're doing? What's the best approach for that?
Yeah, the conversation with your client is really important. Actually, I mean, I do Zoom calls. I can share my screen, show them the LinkedIn profiles. We teach LinkedIn, so I'm going to say do everything in LinkedIn, but you don't need to, right? You can definitely reach out. The value of LinkedIn is, if you have an email, all they get to learn about you is your email signature. If you have a LinkedIn, they're going to click through your profile and say, who is this person? And if you've positioned your profile to be value centric, then ultimately you are going to convert more of those to conversations.
So there's some work that needs to be done before you go to your
Oh,
clients
sure.
for these introductions. Is that
Absolutely.
what you're saying?
Yeah, you need to move your profile from a resume to a resource because this is your landing page. And the job of that landing page is to help you show up as the subject matter expert that you are, so that when your buyer gets there, they learn something new, they're thinking a little differently about their current situation, and they raise their hand and say, you know what, I want to have a conversation because I learned so much from their profile. I can't imagine how much I can learn with a conversation.
It's so interesting. So it's almost surprising to me, actually. Do you find there's still a lot of people who think the LinkedIn profile is a resume?
Most people think that, and that's because
Most
LinkedIn encouraged that.
So there's been a big shift, and you and I are on that shift. We understand that, and a lot of the people that I'm working with understand that as well. How do you fill that gap then? How, not fill the gap, but make that leap? So if you're in my profile is a resume, and if anybody sees it, I'm not quite ready for that to happen with introductions to very valuable members of my sort of referral network, and you got to get it right. How do you fill that gap?
Can you clarify the gap again? I'm not exactly sure
The
what you're
gap,
saying.
actually, not, that's the wrong word. So the transformation. So how do you change from the resume orientation on LinkedIn to the value-based approach?
Yeah, so the first thing you have to do is identify who you help, how you help them, and the results that you bring. Then you have to identify the challenge that they're facing and insights that you can provide that lead to your solution, but not with your solution. What I mean is, we help people do this is leading with your solution,
Mm-hmm.
right? But here are ways to think about things, or a way, a different way to consider. And even though it may be almost the same, so maybe we help people become better leaders. That's maybe what I want to say. Instead, it's like 3 tips to become a better leader. Right. And then you talk about like the 3 major things that you get them to if they worked with you, but you're not saying we help people do it. We're actually helping them and starting them on the journey right in the about section.
That's interesting and different from what a
Mhm.
lot of people would say in
I
response
agree.
to that question. If I'm looking at it that way, then um, are you? It almost is like you're saying. Tell me if I'm right here. I'm getting this. That your LinkedIn profile becomes like a piece of evergreen content,
Absolutely.
like your core article,
It,
your book, your white paper.
It's certain, yeah, and there you can add so many more resources to it. It's really a hub. It's your personal, hub. And if you're a solopreneur, there are a lot more people that are getting to your LinkedIn profile than even your website. So we have to make sure that it's doing its job, which is converting these connections to conversations. And so the way to do that is to show up as a resource, not to just be a pitch.
So you go to LinkedIn, you get your profile where it needs to be, you show up as a resource, you deliver value immediately before you talk to somebody. Then you go to your network and you identify who you want to talk to within their network. You make sure you get on the phone with them. It sounds like ideally a couple of ways to do it. Who are you comfortable introducing me to, or can I just go do this? Make it easier for you. And then, so that's great. That's one strategy. Now, so the problem with Rolodex is Rolodex selling, which is, this is like the old time Rolodex selling approach, right? Is at some point you get to Z. So when you get to Z in the
By
alpha,
that time, you should have had a lot more clients.
so is this it? Is this all you need to do to
No,
fill
I
up
mean,
your
you need
client
to
base, or
nurture.
is there another
Yeah,
step?
you need to nurture with content. You need to engage. Like there's a whole like thought leadership, consistency, um, following and engaging on other thought leaders, providing your own thought leadership, nurturing your existing connections. So there's a whole like there's definitely a whole lot more that you can do. But I think initially your question was, as a solopreneur, that's never sold, where do I start? And if
Yep.
I say to a solopreneur, you have to be a content creator, they're going to go, I'm out, I'm
Yep.
done.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to start with, let's get your profile where it needs to be, because that even though it's not completely static, it's the bulk of the work is done and it's done, right? Then it's leveraging network. I can do this. I'm talking to my clients anyway. I'm having these conversations. I understand referral. Once you've got a trend there, then there's a whole bunch of ways to like start to capture your genius for content. So we'll talk to solopreneurs about every conversation you have, make it your mission to find one line that you said that created the head tilt. What do I write? They went, oh, that's interesting. Write it down. That's your content. So it doesn't have to be full on blog posts. If you're a talker and not a writer, record yourself on Zoom. If you have a paid account, click transcribe and then edit your recording and you have content. So there's a lot of ways non-writers can get content, but if I start with that, they run. So
Yeah, exactly. The other problem I see often with solo operators is a challenge with infrastructure, with lack of infrastructure. So there's this peak and valley. So they don't really have a pipeline. They have bits of a pipeline.
mm-hmm.
So what happens is they do what you suggested, and the world is great.
Yeah.
All the clients, you get all these great clients, they come in and you stop.
Well,
And
now
then
you
you
have new
spend six
clients to
months
do
working.
it with.
How do
Yeah.
you how do you keep this going?
You have every new client, as soon as you bring value and they go, this was awesome, you get referrals. It feeds itself. There should never be empty pipeline if it's working, right?
Got it.
Yeah.
So you need to build into your process a conversation where you go to somebody when they're at the peak of happiness based on working with you, and then follow this approach.
Yeah, exactly. And you also have referral partners that you can build relationships with and get referrals as well and give referrals. So that's another avenue. So we have a marketing company where we pass back referrals all day long. I don't do websites or newsletter copy, and they don't do LinkedIn. And so, a huge percentage of our business is referring. The other piece, I have a partner who creates content for companies. So I'm like, yeah, they need content. So you go there, and she brings, oh, they need sales navigator training.
Right.
Yeah. So building those relationships on LinkedIn are really important as well.
So as you're thinking about your partnership program, how do you identify what kind of partners are the right partners, and how do you motivate them to care enough about you to make those introductions for you?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's over time. If you really want to start with someone where you're coming in with credibility, is get introductions from your clients into their vendors. Who are they using? So now you have a shared client that, they have more faith in the work that you do because you have a client that says, I love them, and vice versa. So starting there is a really good way to meeting some of those folks. The other thing is just to consistently show up, give first, right? That's always a good thing. And just keep the communication going so that you get to know you. And there's not a match with everyone, right? There's a culture, there's a culture match, there's a connection. And so, pick your partners wisely. Don't have like 7 marketing companies that pick
Mhm.
1 or 2 where there's a real good match, and that when you make an introduction, they're going to serve your client.
That makes a lot of sense. So let me summarize what I heard and tell me if I got this right or forgot something. So the first thing I heard is get your profile in shape, turn it into a thought leader, evergreen piece of content where it delivers very simple, clear, concise value to the marketplace that you want to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Go to your clients with a list, talk to them directly from an analysis of their LinkedIn connections, and find an easy introductory method that works for you and works for them. And then as you onboard a client, you get that client to the peak of happiness, you go to them, repeat the process, and then create a partnership network by understanding specifically what kinds of resources your clients are also buying. And then specifically getting introduced to those people.
Yes.
So I don't hear anything cold here.
No cold.
This is all networking.
Yes.
Basically, this is online digital networking, the way people used to do this
in the real world
at the Chamber of Commerce 30 years ago.
That's right. That's all it is. Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. This was great. Brynne, I really appreciate the conversation. I think people are going to get a lot out of this. If somebody's interested in working through some of these exercises, what do you have to offer them?
Yeah, well, we have a free membership to our LinkedIn library. If you go to socialsaleslink.com/library, totally free. And then we have e-learning and coaching and group coaching, all really reasonable, low cost for solopreneurs, because we get you and we know you don't have a huge investment budget. So, we've got e-learning at a $99 price point and then $29 a month for coaching. It can't go wrong. So if you're looking for that, reach out. Just drop me a quick email at brynne@socialsaleslink.com.
Okay, that's perfect. And for anybody listening, this is also available in the Revenue Climber Club community platform in the Outfitter section. So you can easily click through and get that done, which I'd highly recommend. It's something I'm using as well.
Fabulous. Thanks so much for having me, Larry. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. Thanks for listening. If you're self-employed and tired of not having enough great clients, join our free Revenue Climber Club. Click salessherpa.co for details. and to sign up for the community. Stop climbing alone and reach the summit together with us.